Hey everybody, last video we were speaking about coming into subjection to either the enemy or to Yahusha. Who are you going to be? A subject of, a servant of, a love slave of. You love Satan and get into what he's saying and listen. He's your private, secret, dark traveler that walks with you, and your private little confidant keeps you safe and warm, muttering and talking to yourself and, judging everybody and having this secret life to yourself that no one's allowed to know about, but they can see it anyway. Is that you? Or will you come into subjection to Yahusha's authority? And it means your mind, your heart, your being is over time healed and washed and sobered up. Your behavior becomes normal again. Not to the world standard, but to Yahusha. You come clean. You become kind. You become sane. We're going to continue that thought of the two dueling empires, the two dueling reigns, the two dueling children from Rebecca's body that were against each other. Look at your screen. We're coming into Bloodlines today. We're going to continue that theme. We're also continuing the story of King Saul, because he just got coronated. Samuel officially handed the reins over to him and said, "Good luck, Yisrael. He's all yours. Take him. You asked for a king, you got one. Don't come crying to me or Yahusha when he starts treating you like a tyrant," because that's what kings do. And you wanted a king like the world. So here you go. Cop this. Saul's already pretty much proved himself and everyone's rallied around him pretty much. Now he's going to have a real battle on his hands. This is Saul's first real war as the officially recognized king of Yisrael. But still, he was only really operating with the 8 northern tribes and had very little to do with Judah and Simeon. They were the 2 southern tribes. Because not only did a ridge of rugged mountains geographically separate the north from the south, but Judah never really warmed to Saul as their king. They didn't violently oppose him, but they weren't going to lift him up either, because Benjamin was more loyal to the northern tribes, and these guys were from the south. So politics. So the Philistines were growing more and more powerful, and even though Sam had hit them hard and pushed them back years earlier, they'd regained a foothold in Israel again. But if they were going to expand their sphere of influence, it had to be to the east. Now this map here is on its side. Normally we're used to looking at it, it's like the other way around. Like Egypt's down here, Egypt's down that way, and normally the sea's up on this side. So you turn your head slightly and you'll get more familiar with it. The map is just like that for this illustration here, because you can see here the Philistines really could only go to the east if they were to conquer. They can't. This is just water here. So the only way they could conquer was to go east, because they were currently occupying a strip of land along the Mediterranean sea coast, which is great because they were sea merchants. But in order to have something to export, they needed land, trade routes, and all the land was to the east. Canaan. How they're going to sell any of their produce, their fish, their things that they trade from people coming in on the sea, how they're going to sell any of it, export any of it, if they had nowhere to go. And Israel's all around here, and these guys are stuck on the coast. So they needed trade routes. And all the land was to the east, Canaan, which put Israel directly in the crosshairs. And while they, the Philistines, really weren't interested in Israel's land, they did want to rule and control the people. Why? To have access to farm produce and labour and the crisscrossing trade routes to build their wealth. So they weren't interested in the title deed of the land of Canaan as such. They just wanted to be able to control their areas so they could get their produce, their import-export business going and not have any dramas. So that's what the Philistines are interested in. That's why they're trying to gain territory in the land of Canaan. So let's go to Samuel chapter 13. Saul's been coronated by Samuel. Samuel said, "See you later." He's all yours. Now 2 years after Saul had been the king over Israel, he chose 3,000 men from Israel to be full-time soldiers and sent everyone else home. For many civilians would rally and fight when there was a national disaster. Lots of men would just come together, whether they were official soldiers or not, when there was a battle. But he's pretty much declaring, I don't want part-time soldiers anymore. I want a proper army, full-time soldiers. So he chose 3,000 of them. And 2,000 of these troops stayed with him in the hills around Michmash and Bethel, while the other 1,000 were stationed with Saul's son John, at Gibeah in the territory of Benjamin. These 3 towns, if you look at a map, formed a triangle. On there, bring that here, formed a triangle. So John led an attack on the Philistine army camp at Gibeah, killing their general. And the other Philistines heard what happened, and they went berserk. So Saul told his messengers, "Go to every village in the country, giving a signal with the trumpet. And when the people come together, tell them what has happened." And the messengers went to all the people of Israel, saying, "Saul has destroyed the Philistine army general at Gibeah, and they're furious. You know what the Philistines are like. They hate our guts. Now every town and village must send men to join Saul's army at Gilgal." Then the Philistines called their army together to fight Israel. They had 3,000 chariots, 6,000 cavalry, and as many foot soldiers as there are grains of sand on the seashore. Obviously that's a figure of speech. It just means there's stacks almost as far as the eye can see. They just had so many soldiers. Many people were arguing about this figure here. There's no nation ever in the world that could possibly even fit or produce such a great number of chariots. But that's what the scripture says. So that's that. And they all headed to Michmash. The Philistines headed to Michmash, setting up camp east of Beth-aven. And the Israelite army realized that they were severely outnumbered and were going to lose the battle. So some of the Israelite men ran and hid in the caves or in clumps of bushes, and some ran to places where they could hide among the large rocks. Others hid in tombs or in deep dry pits, and some went to Gad and Gilead on the other side of the Jordan River. So Israel's just running away, scarpering. Saul is starting to behave much like a modern day politician. Talking a good game, we're going to see more of this behaviour as we go on, but Saul is starting to behave more like a modern day politician. Talking a good game, but he wouldn't act unless there was something in it for him, at no risk to himself. He said he was the king of Israel, but generally just looked where the parade was already going, then jumped in front to take the credit. Yeah? Crowd pleaser. His courage was measured by the level of support he got, and he melted quickly if he felt the opposition was too great. And while at times he ordered the people to diligently obey the instructions of Moses or bear the consequences, he also played fast and loose. With those same instructions, and felt he was generally above it all. So, a lot of his army is just buggering off. But Saul stayed at Gilgal with his soldiers, who were shaking with fear. In fact, some were starting to run off and leave him too. But Saul waited there 7 days, just as Samuel had instructed when he anointed him. Interesting. But Sam still hadn't come. So finally, Saul told his men, "Stuff this. I'm done waiting for that old crackpot. Bring me some animals so we can make an offering ourselves to please Yahuwah and ask for his help." So, check this out. So Saul killed one of the animals and made an ascending near offering. Remember the offerings all the 4 or 5, 6 offerings we dealt with in Leviticus? Well, this ascending near offering, if you've forgotten, was only for the high priest to offer up. So Saul killed one of the animals and made an ascending near offering to Yahusha. Even though only the high priest or Sam was permitted, Sam as well now, Sam's kind of acting as a jack of all trades. Sam could have done it, but not Saul. Only the high priest or Sam was permitted to perform such an offering. And just as he was placing it on the altar, the animal, just as he was placing it on the altar, Sam arrived. And Saul got very excited, rushed out to welcome him. "What the hell are you doing?" Samuel yelled at Saul. "What am I doing? Where the hell have you been? We've all been waiting here for you. My soldiers are buggering off in every direction, and the Philistines have gathered at Michmash. We're all sitting ducks here, freaking out. So yeah, I forced myself to offer up an ascending near offering on the altar fire to ask for Yahuwah's help." "No kidding, you dumbass. What a stupid thing to do. You can't make those offerings. Who do you think you are? You really don't give a toss about Yahuwah's instructions, do you? You really don't give a toss about Yahuwah's instructions, do you? Saul, don't you realize that if you'd just done what he asks, he'd be able to trust you and your family would have been royalty? But no, you constantly disobey him. So now Yahuwah won't choose anyone else from your family to be king." Just like that. You know. In fact, he's already chosen a man after his own heart, who thinks and feels the way he does. And he'll be the next leader of his people. "Yeah, blow it out your wazoo, Sam," Saul said with no remorse, and Sam left Gilgal. No remorse, no argument, nothing. Saul just blew it all off, thinking it was merely a personal feud between him and Sam that would eventually blow over in time. So Saul's just acting completely in the natural, isn't he? He's apparently anointed. He was once anointed anyway for this position, but how's he behaving? Doing everything in his own strength, you know? Acting, as it says up here, like a modern day politician, all about the show, all about looking good in the eyes of the people, you know. But when it comes to actually the simple instructions laid out by Moses, in this situation, what sacrifices you can make and what sacrifices you can't, what you need priests and the high priest for, oh, stuff it. There's too much pressure. We're taking matters into our own hands. Stuff all those silly little rules. We're doing it ourselves. They're not silly little rules, are they? Because he's just been booted out of the position. Not immediately, but he's been told that his dynasty is over. Yahusha is no longer going to anoint his children. You know, his family will not be in the monarchy, will not be royal after him. So Yahusha's chosen someone else. And he doesn't even care. Blow it at your wazoo. He doesn't care. So Sam's gone. Part of Saul's army had not deserted him, and he led them to Gibeah in Benjamin to join his other troops. Then he counted them and found that he still had 600 men. So Saul, his son John, and their army set up camp at Gibeah in Benjamin. The Philistine army was camped at Michmash, and each day they sent out patrols to attack and rob villages and then destroy them. One patrol would go north along the road to Ophrah in the region of Shaul, another would go west along the road to Beth-horon, and a third patrol would go east towards the desert of the road to the ridge that overlooks Zeboim Valley. This was an interesting point. The Philistines wouldn't allow any Israelites to learn how to make iron tools, for they said if we allowed that, those worthless Israelites would make swords and spears. So whenever the Israelites wanted to get any iron work done, even an iron point put on a cattle prod, they had to go to the Philistines, and they charged high prices. Yeah, that's pretty much what that's saying there. So, very interesting. Yisrael didn't have hardly any iron weapons. They had to go and pay the Philistines if they needed any cattle, farming equipment made, So whenever the Israelite soldiers had to go into battle, none of them had a sword or a spear except Saul and his son John. Made of iron anyway, that's what it's saying. Israel was still using wood or bronze, but had few to no metal-edged weapons. The Philistines, on the other hand, were known for their high degree of metal technology and used it to their advantage in their weaponry. Iron was relatively new to the region, and it was a significant advance over bronze, which was a much softer material, meaning that a soldier could literally break an enemy's bronze sword with his much harder, sharper iron sword. So, very interesting here. Did you know that the majority of people who read these scriptures, even most Yahusha people, believe that the promised land of Yisrael, Israel today, has huge spiritual prophetic significance? Huge prophetic spiritual significance. How insane. These are the same people who cling to the importance of bloodlines and priesthoods as though Yahusha will pay attention to any of that when he returns. Every eye will see, every knee will bow, and the new city will descend onto a new earth, not in Israel. So, as we've been going through these scriptures about the judges, even Joshua conquering the land, we've dealt with this many times, the promised land, the promised land. So many people want to read into the scriptures and pull parallels between what's happening here and what's going to happen in Revelation to the land, the land, the land. It's all about the land. Oh, the city's going to come down on the Mount of Olives, and it's all about the land over in the Middle East. We've got to make sure the land's ready. The people are ready. The earth's ready. And everything's got to be ready. The earth's going to be burnt up. It's going to be destroyed completely, frackled up when the dimensions combine. We dealt with all that too. So what on earth importance is there talking about the land? It's bizarre. Insane. And yet even Yahusha people immersed into Yahusha still think, oh, it's the promised land. Oh, it's the promised land. Even though they may not want to go over there, they're still keeping an eye on it. Keep an eye on that place over there like it means anything. You might as well keep your eye on Ayers Rock. Who gives a toss? It's completely irrelevant. And any drama that's going on over there is all religious. So, keep your eye on it if you want, but it's totally a waste of time. It's useless. Just like it is with these bloodlines and priesthoods. That's what we're going into now. This bloodline. We're continuing from the last article, which spoke about Rebecca. Yeah, it was Rebecca. Her sons, Jacob and Esau, were in her womb. They were even wrestling in the womb. And then Jacob has an experience with Yahusha. Remember? He wrestles him. So we're going to talk about these bloodlines. Israel is still wrestling. Israel's still wrestling. Let's look at the word Israel in the Hebrew so we get an understanding. Because Israel today, they all think they're something. So what does it mean? Israel, brother, friend of his father, Achab, the name of a king of Israel and a prophet of Babylon, Ahab. The mighty God of Yisrael, the title given to a consecrated spot by Jacob. To stink, offensiveness, got that right. Basha, king of Israel. Dove, of the silence. Dumb Israel, among distances, strangers. The title of a ditty, used for the name of its melody, like a song. He will rule as GD, Israel, symbolic name of Jacob. Typically his posterity, Israel. Israelite or descendant of Israel. Upright, Yeshurun, symbol name of Israel, Yeshurun. As a people, a congregation or a unit, specifically a tribe, as those of Israel, hence troops or attendants, folk, men, nation, people. Interesting when you look at what this means in the Hebrew language and then you bring it into the scripture. Where did Israel come from? The name Israel first appeared in the Hebrew scripture in Genesis 32 and refers to the renaming of Jacob, who wrestled with an angel, who gave him a blessing and renamed him Israel, because he had striven with GD and with men, and had prevailed. So keep in mind that this is leading on from the last article, which spoke about the two sons, the two children, the two nations that were inside Rebekah, and one would be in submission to the other. Well, now we see that the younger one, who stole his birthright and the blessing, run away, and now he's got a family now. Been working 20 years, he's got a family. All the 12 tribes of Israel have been birthed, the sons, and now he's had a wrestling match with Yahusha. It says an angel, but we know it's Yahusha. And Yahusha sconed him in the leg. Yeah. And after this, Yahuwah said, "Your name is no longer called Jacob, but Israel, because you have striven with you Elohim and men and have overcome." Why is his name Israel? Because you have striven, wrestled, overcome with Elohim and with men and have overcome. Can the same be said about you? Are you striving with men and with Yahusha? Are you striving? Are you fighting? Are you in there? Are you overcoming? Yeah? Dealing with people, dealing with the instructions, dealing with Yahusha in your life. Are you wrestling? Are you overcoming? Yeah? This is what happened to Jacob. And just like Samuel in our last episode took Israel through a bit of a journey from Egypt and said, this is why you've been so disobedient. Every time Yahusha's come to you, you've disobeyed him, this. It takes him through the whole history. Well, now, in this article, we've got a different kind of history, which is fascinating. The 12 sons of Jacob became the 12 tribes of Israel. And through miracles, over 3 million Jews were taken out of Egypt to meet with their Elohim on the mountain. Yahuwah met with them, gave them his Torah instructions on how to live amongst an idolatrous generation and have victory over evil mindsets. Israel was to be an example to this world of the benefits of having the one true Elohim's love, to guide us to deliverance and victory over evil, the enemy that opposes Torah. 40 years of wilderness wanderings did not shake the idolatry from Yahuwah's chosen bride, Israel. 40 years of wanderings did not shake the idolatry from Yahuwah's chosen bride. Many of the chosen were told and given example upon example that idolatry is unacceptable. But they were stubborn and found themselves destroyed because of it. Only the children of these chosen were allowed to go into the promised land and claim it for their own. But they still followed the wickedness of their fathers and were defeated continually by the seduction of the nation's idolatry with their lavish feasts. Isn't that what we see all around us? Feasts, global, Mazaroth system, calendar events, the feasts, even daily, weekly, Anyway, after Solomon died, Israel split into two nations, just like Isaac's wife Rebekah, who was prophesied over, saying she had two nations in her womb. See it coming around? She said the older would be in subjection to the younger. She had two nations in her womb. At any rate, by this time, Yahuwah was so fed up with Israel's constant idolatry, he divorced his chosen wife for playing the whore and took his presence from the temple. Israel was attacked and scattered throughout the nations, and ever since then, there have always been sects of those hanging around Israel who claim to be the chosen and of the bloodline of Adam. How long do we have to go on about bloodlines for? The bloodline is a most important issue to the Jews, but not to Yahusha. People of Israel today claim, unless you are immersed into one of the tribes of Israel, it is impossible to claim Jewish nationalism. That's what Israel's on about. The Yahudim, the Jews, all that religious BS that they're going on about. You've got to be immersed into one of their tribes. Otherwise, you can't claim Jewish nationalism. Yahusha has a very different story to tell. The Jews have held aspects of the Torah, for centuries, and have never let it be changed. Some of it. Which is admirable, because it's been held for Yahusha's chosen for these last days. So the bits of truth that they have held on to, that we're standing on, the real truth, instructions given to Moses and all those sort of things, stand on them. It's great. It's for the chosen bride in the last days, not for any of them. Yahusha said, your body is now the temple where I want to dwell. It can only be that personal, not in temples built by men, for he can't be personal from a place like that. Yahusha told us that he came for the sick and the lost to give them deliverance and health, not for those who think they've made it and are right. You get that? There are many believers from all religions today that claim to be of the bloodline of Elohim and who treat others so un-Messiah-like. So what's it about? Blood, lineage, or belief and behavior? What's it about? Do you get that? It can't be about your body. Say that again. It can't be about man-made structures, guys. He can't be personal from a place like that. So it's the same with the promised land. The only point of a promised land was so that he could be in it with his people. And how was he in it? Through the ark, through the temple, tabernacle, on top of the mercy seat. He wanted to connect with his people, with his bride. That's the only point of having a land. Today we are that property. We are that divine set apart property, divine real estate. Our body is now the temple. So it's very, very personal. So if you're going through a personal nightmare inside yourself, finding that for the first time ever you're actually trying to do everything the right way and falling on your face day after day, get back up and keep going, because this is meant to be. It's meant to be that close and personal, burning you so that you get the urgency, you get his intention to stop behaving like that, stop doing that, stop speaking like that, stop everything you're doing. He's that personal. He can't operate like that in a stupid temple made with bricks and mortar and all that crap. No, he's operating in your heart. He's circumcised it, given us a love for his truth, and he's going to give it. You wanted it. You wanted him to come close. You wanted him to be living in your vessel. Take the fire. Now, Christopher said here, I myself have Catholic in-laws who, along with their whole family, hate me. Of course, they love my son, who's in jail, and they talk about him with wonderment and respect. They never inquire about my person and hardly ever mention me. My social standing in this world is not up to their level of education and belief. So my bloodline is not considered, but ostracized. My son is completely accepted by them because he has the blood of my wife in his veins, which is considered as their bloodline. See this context? Look at what you've been through coming out. What have all your friends and family and in-laws, and look at Christopher's experience here. Have you gone through similar experiences like this because of your new royal bloodline? I know that I've been delivered from evil and set free from such wickedness. I am of a royal priesthood and a son of the King of Kings. I have the blood of Yahusha flowing through my veins rather than being of the family of the walking dead. The depth of Satan's darkness is so horrifically cruel. The depth of Satan's darkness is so horrifically cruel. But the love of Yahusha's light can frackle up such wickedness. We have the victory by his bloodline. So we're using the bloodline and coming into more of a belief aspect now, guys. If you come into Yahusha and his blood, there's only two types of blood. There's Yahusha's blood and earthly blood, bloodlines, lineage, heritage, nostalgia and all that crap they go on with in the world. Just like Israel had a choice. Do you want to choose Yahusha and his prophet, or do you want the world? We have that choice here too, guys. You've got your family, their bloodline, your lineage and heritage, or you've got Yahusha's blood. And which bloodline do you want to be a part of? There's only two movements in the world. All of religion. Christians feel the same way too. Jews, as we've just mentioned, feel the same. What tribe are you a part of? The Christians are like that too. What banner do you come under? Who are you listening to? Who are you talking to? You know, what preacher do you come under? What banner, what umbrella of teaching? It's all their religious bloodlines and doctrines of belief and all their crap and rubbish that they go on with. Or are you in Yahusha's bloodline? Yeah? Remember, they're both wrestling. Are you wrestling? The two nations are inside. One will be in subjection to the other. It looks like we're in subjection to the world right now, doesn't it? Because we're crying out. Even the earth is crying out for deliverance, for the transformation of all flesh. Even all of us, the earth, it's all happening that way. But we want to see Yahusha. Yeah, we are of his bloodline. So we've been delivered from evil, guys, set free from such wickedness. And as Christopher says, I'm of a royal priesthood, son of the King of Kings. You walk around, you believe that in your day? Or are you Satan's bitch still? Or are you just in and out, on the fence, stepping in and out, still wanting your way a bit, then you come out, sick of the suffering and the punishment, so you step out again, you know, in and out, in and out. Well, I guess if you got to go through that, testing the word, testing the voice you're hearing, test, great, test, run, get to the end of it so you can stand on it. I have the blood of Yahusha flowing through my veins, rather than being of the family of the walking dead. The walking dead. The depth of Satan's darkness is so horrifically cruel. The love of Yahusha's light can frackle up such wickedness. Yahusha doesn't want you looking, feeling to, coming under, subjecting yourself to anybody in the world, anybody in the bride either. Friends, family, brothers and sisters, husbands. He doesn't want you coming under anybody, being in subjection to anybody. He wants you liberated and free. He wants to be the only one who can mold you, accept you. He wants your eyes on him. He's very jealous. It's in the pattern of a marriage, remember? So you looking to other people is like whoring yourself. Come out of it. Come forward and keep your eyes on Yahusha, and he will be so pleased with you. If you only are interested in what he feels and what he wants and his voice, that's what he wants for you. Think of yourself, guys. The 3 rules keep you safe. Stop taking everything so bloody personally, because it's not even about you. If someone hates you, it's because of Yahusha, not you. So just let them all have their insanity. You can't change them. You can't transform them. You can't convert them. So what are you trying to for? Let them all have it. Shut your face. Shut your face. And stop making so many excuses for yourself. If you can't sleep at night and you've got to make excuses, then don't sleep. Don't sleep. Face what it is that you can't face. Face it all and come to the end of it. Then you'll be able to sleep really well. Love you guys.